What's up, everyone? Welcome into the All 22 NFL podcast, the official podcast of the All 22 fantasy football platform. It is the only fantasy football game with full 53-man rosters, including offensive linemen, where you get to choose personnel packages and have access to PFF grading to make decisions each week. To learn more and sign up, go to all-22.com. Ray, I'm still recovering a little bit from the expo. Those were some wild nights, some really good days, and a flag football championship. So good time.
Yeah, my hip is still sore. I actually think if we didn't have like this cool news to like kind of hold me over, you know how you get like a bit of an adrenaline rush when there's like a bit of good news or something like that, you know, or you get something done and accomplished. I probably would have been bedridden all week. It's just the way the body just kind of breaks down at a certain point. And I think I reached that point.
You reached that point about 5 years ago, my man.
I did.
I'm feeling good. I am still tired. I don't recover sleep-wise as well as I used to. It's been a little brutal. But you were right. There was some insanely big news. And people, we warned you about this a couple weeks ago when we did our last podcast. I hope you followed us on Twitter. If you haven't yet, right? Go to all22_PFF on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. We made a big announcement. We have mobile apps. Mobile apps are live, people. And I'm just going to say it, they're pretty freaking cool. I've been having so much fun. I got drafts. I got 2 drafts tonight. I'm pumped about it, man. Are you enjoying yourself?
Yeah, I just find myself just like fiddling with it, you know, almost sending poor trade offers to other teams just so I can use the app. But yeah, iOS and Google Play Store app is live on both now. So whatever you use for your mobile needs and your mobile fantasy footballing, we are there. So check out the app. It's been a long time coming. A lot of hard work went into it, trying to deliver the best for all of you. We're super excited about it. And we already have enhancements in mind and are already in the works just to kind of keep this train going, just keep making things better for you, the user, the listener. We really appreciate all of you and are committed to giving you the very best. So there's so much more to come, but yeah, check it out. It's pretty sleek. You can navigate it very easily, just in time for mostly draft season and obviously in time for the season to start here in a couple weeks. So check it out. Leave it a 5-star review. As always, you'll hear Chris always say that at the end of these episodes, but now I'm going to say it here towards the start. Leave us a 5-star rating and a good review on the app. And even if you hate it, Chris at all-22.com, just give us 5 stars and then send your negative thoughts to Chris afterwards. That's totally cool too. But we love to hear from you either way. So appreciate you all.
I got you, people. You can send me anything. But you know what it feels like, Ray? Like being here, right? It's like, do you remember in high school when you had like your big game and then Monday going into school feeling like super, super good about everything, right? Strutting down the hallways. I feel like we need to strut down the hallways a little bit, right? Like flag football championship, app release. It's been a good couple weeks, people. It's been a good couple weeks. Today we're talking.
Get my rings, Bob.
don't leave
Just
Bob
kidding,
alone.
Bob. It's all good, Bob.
Leave Bob alone. We're talking about guards today. This is the final position, right? We did every position in football, sans special teams, right? Like this has been a fun little thing we've done, and we're down to the last position, which is guards, and it's not a great group of guys. I think there's promising players, right? And there's people we really like, right? Like everybody loves watching Robert Hunt score touchdowns. It's a fun group of players. But at the end of the day, it's a position that's pretty top heavy. And if you don't get your guys early, you're going to be in a really bad place, right? And when we talk about positional value, while positional value is super important, right? Like you want to draft an edge rusher over a guard or a center, right? Because the value is just there. There's a lot more edge players than there are guards and centers. So if you don't get one of the top guys, you're going to be in a really uncomfortable position. Whereas edge rusher, maybe a Hassan Reddick, sorry to say his name, Jets fans, sorry about that. But if you don't get him, a top guy, you might be able to get a Hassan Reddick later, a guy that's going to score pretty well. It's not that at guard. So if you don't get one of these top guys, you're going to be struggling.
Yeah, sometimes even when you do get a top guy, you might be struggling because slight down years for those guards in like the 10 to 14 range, any slight downturn, you're in like the high 60s at that point. It's actually not struggling. You're just holding serve. But when you're looking at a top 15 guy at a certain position, you're hoping for more than that. So it's tough to navigate. It's fun for all of us to talk about, but it is tough to navigate because, as we always say, again, it's a lot harder to find big guys that can move than little guys that can move. And regardless of position in the NFL, you have to be able to move. You have to be athletic to be successful at the highest level. So it's just one of those deals. It's supply and demand. Only so many humans are built big enough and well enough to perform well at this level, at that position. So yeah, it's tough, but that's why we're here.
That's right. And like edge rusher and defensive interior, where you follow week by week the scores and performances, there's going to be 5 guys every week that score close to 90, if not higher. The guard position, again, just that's not going to happen, right? And my tier 1 only has 1 guy in it because there is literally 1 guy
Ooh.
that when you look week over week performs that way, and he's still young, right? So like you get the age thing, you get the week to week performance thing. There's 1 guy. There's probably not another position in football that has that small of a group of tier 1 players, right? And that's Chris Lindstrom in Atlanta, 27 years old, 87.6 grade last year. But there's also this year over year performance growth with him where he just gets better and better, right? And he's also in a very stable environment. We've talked about how we like Atlanta this year. We like the addition of Kirk Cousins, what that'll do to the offense. We like the coaching changes, right? Like hard-nosed football coaching changes are good for offensive linemen. That should benefit Chris Lindstrom. And also another year of like Bijan getting mature. That's going to be better for Lindstrom. I just like the direction Atlanta's going, but I also like Chris Lindstrom himself. You're looking at it, right? The year before last, that 87.6 was the year before was a 95. Like this is the elite guard in the NFL right now, and there really is only one. If you don't get him, you don't have an elite guard. That's just kind of fact.
Yeah, 27-year-old guard might as well be 25 at most other positions. So again, they last a little bit longer when you do have a good one. So by all means, everything around him has only gotten better. He's in a grown-up offense now, and he's firmly in his prime, probably still on the front end of that prime. So there's no box that's unchecked with Chris Lindstrom. I think he's far and away the number 1 guy, top 3 run blocker, top 6 pass blocker in what was we won't even say down year, just a normal year for him last year, not even a peak year like in 2022. So the recipe is there. The stars are aligning for a 2022 type of season for Lindstrom, where he is far and away the number 1 guy at the position. He's in a class of his own.
He really is. So we don't need to talk more about that. Let's just go to that tier 2, because tier 2, I think, also is pretty clear cut in terms of the guys in there. But I'm curious if you're going to end up having some arguments. So I'll read off my list. It's Quinn Meinerz with Denver. He's a 25-year-old with an 83.8 grade last year, but it really was just last year that he reached that level. The reason I liked him and still decided to put him in this top of tier 2 is because there's that year-over-year growth. You're showing it right now. 2021, 67.4, 2022, 77.7, and then 2023, 83.8. This is a 3rd-round pick. He's a guy they invested in and they wanted to see be successful. He has the draft pedigree. I liked him in college. I believed in him then. I believe in him now. I believe he belongs in tier 2 now. And I expect, even if it doesn't continue to grow, like where he never gets to maybe 90, I expect him to stay in this low 80s range and be a really good player for you. Michael Onwenu in New England, 26 years old, 71.5 last year. And that was kind of a down year for him, right? The beginning of his career was higher, 84.3, 87 in years 1 and 2, and then a 79.3 in 2022. And then last year, the 71.5. That situation was a nightmare last year. And besides that, they've moved him around that offensive line nonstop. He's playing a different position each week, but I think that stops now. I think New England is going to move in a direction where they want to stabilize him so they could stabilize his play. They know he's the best offensive lineman on the team. That's why they decided to give him the contract. I think he gets better. I think it improves. He's still young. He's 26. I like his futures. Trey Smith with Kansas City is a guy we both liked in the draft, 25 years old, 72.3 grade last year. It hasn't been the steady growth that we typically like to see. The 3-year total has been pretty stable, but he's still very young, right? As a 3-year starter to just be 25 years old, just turned 25 years old, there's still so much room for growth. He hasn't hit that prime yet. I do expect him to improve. I expect Kansas City to want to keep a guy like him to protect Patrick Mahomes and the investments they've made in him. So I expect continued growth for Trey Smith. And then the last guy in my tier 2 is Tyler Smith, still 23 years old. He was my draft dream for the Packers. I've talked about this before. The Cowboys took him, and it's been great, right? 72.9 last year. He's only 23 years old. He's a young 23. He's going to be playing this season at 23 years old. They're building that offensive line. They're investing in younger guys to help build up that offensive line. I expect big things for Tyler Smith in that career trajectory growth. So he's a guy I'm buying into in my tier 2, and that's the end of it. It's 4 guys. I think there maybe could be a couple more, but for me, it's pretty clear cut that those 4 guys deserve to be in a class of their own.
Yeah, the thing with Onwenu is when he settles into a position, what is it ultimately? If he's a tackle, then everything you said for him at tackle applies to guard, even though we think guard is his best position. The stability is what will help him because he's somebody that can be a top, I think at guard, top 5-ish guard, which is why we have him in tier 2, and then maybe a top 15-ish tackle, but neither way he's a top player for you. It's just that stability will probably determine his, but all these other names may perform as well in 2024 as some of the names we mentioned, but the age, I think, is the differentiator there with a lot of them. Someone like Robert Hunt, we didn't mention, but 28 years old, had a great year last year. New environment, we'll see. It's probably not as conducive to his grading, but the offense as a whole got a decent amount better in Carolina. So we'll talk about that more in tier 3. But I agree with the 2 tiers here. Maybe that makes for a boring podcast, but that's just guard. Guard is very clear cut in the NFL, I think, these days. Yeah, same with Quentin Nelson. We didn't name him either. That's our boy. But the thing about Tyler Smith I want to highlight too is people often forget last year was his first year playing guard. He was at tackle to end his career at Tulsa, and in 2022 played at left tackle for the Cowboys his rookie year. And then with Tyron Smith playing most of the season last year, he slid inside to guard, and that was pretty much it. Then he just solidified himself at guard, as a top 10 guard in the league, one of the best run blockers in the league, and the rest is history. So he's really, to perform as well as he did in the NFL at a position he was not used to playing at just 22 years old last year, it just bodes really well. And yeah, the talk is he might be the best player. I don't even think it's a might at this point. I think he is clearly the best player on offense for the Cowboys and one of the best players on the team, period. Maybe Sidy would have something to say about that once he's done holding out, but that's it. Tyler Smith has been that good.
Wow. Because, Zach Martin's still there, right? So, that's saying a lot.
We'll talk about Zach Martin, but sure. Tyler Smith has been the dude on that line.
So do you have any guys within this tier that you think rise above the rest?
To me, it would be Tyler Smith, just because of those, again, the youth and the inexperience at the position. There's some young guys here like Quinn Miners, who's, he's 25 years old, but he's played on the interior of the offensive line for years now, and we've seen that growth. Whereas I think the trajectory is higher for Smith than it is for someone like Miners or even Trey Smith, who are both very young themselves, just because of the inexperience and what we're seeing. So to me, it's Tyler Smith above the rest. And then you can't really go wrong between Miners and Trey Smith or Onwenu. Again, he's just a year older at 26. You can't go wrong with those other 3 names. But if I'm on the clock and they're all available, say again, it's probably round 7, I think, is when you would have the conundrum of all of these guys being on the board for you. If I'm on the clock in round 7, I got 2 tackles and 1 edge, a quarterback and a receiver or something, and a corner. And here I am, and I want to take a stab at guard, and they're all available here, and Lindstrom's gone. I'm probably taking Smith, given the age and the trajectory above the others.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was planning on disagreeing with you until you said, if I'm on the clock, who am I taking? I think you're right. I think I'm taking Tyler Smith over the other guys. There's a good argument to be made with Miners because he's kind of what you're hoping the other people become, right? You hope that they continue to rise and get to that low 80, and continue to grow from there, right? We don't know what he can become. He's still 25 years old. So I think there's a really good argument for him. But if I'm just being completely honest and I'm on the clock, it's Tyler Smith, right? Because I believe in the film more than anything else for him over the other guys, and also the situation in Dallas and what they're able to do with offensive linemen. I just believe in, I think Denver, we don't really know what that situation is going to be in 2 years. How stable is it? What's the quarterback situation going to be? Is Bo Nix the guy? Is Sean Payton going to be the head coach for the long haul? I don't really know, right? The Cowboys, Jerry Jones is the owner. He's going to continue to be the GM.
And that ain't a good thing, but yeah.
Yeah, but we know what to expect, right? It's not going to change much.
Yeah.
So I'm good with Tyler Smith being 2. I think Miners has to be 3. I think Trey Smith, just because the situation in KC is so good with Mahomes there, the other guys that they've invested around him, and they want to continue to build that offensive line. I think he would be 4 for me, and Onwenu being 5, just again because of the instability there. I expected them to do more. I think Drake May being a good pick, it made sense. But taking Jalen Polk with their early second-round pick, I thought was such a reach when maybe they could have gotten another offensive lineman to help build that front. I just don't think Jalen Polk is the difference maker. Oh, that design looks familiar.
Yeah.
I don't think Jalen Polk is the difference maker that they need, right? They need difference makers on that offense. They didn't get any, right? They didn't shore up the offensive line. I don't believe they shored up the receiving core. It kind of reminds me of what the Giants did a couple of years ago, taking positions other than offensive line and receiver. And now maybe with Malik Neighbors, it changes things. But when you don't have the Malik Neighbors, you don't really help your team by going and getting a corner, right? And that's what the Giants kind of went and did. So I feel like New England's in a weird position, but I still think Onwenu deserves to be top 5, and he's number 5 for me.
Yeah, I think all of that's fair. I think all of that's fair, and they all belong in that tier together. But I think that's probably the right order. Trey Smith had some medical stuff coming into the league, but I don't think that's really an issue. Maybe someone smarter than me would argue that it is, and that might change things, but I don't see it that way. Just 25 years old, like you said, situation there on the up and up as always. It's the Chiefs. So yeah, I'm good with all that.
You ready for tier 3?
Just going to name my stat out there because I wrote it down, so I don't want to write it down and then not mention it. But Tyler Smith, again, first year playing guard in the NFL, highest pass block efficiency of any guard in the league at 97.8 in his first year.
Wow. That is a big deal.
Yep.
Okay, he's guard 2. You made your point. All right, relax.
I'll keep going.
Tier 3 is also a pretty good group. It doesn't fall off too hard after tier 2, but tier 3 to me separates because you either have guys that just haven't performed long enough, or guys that maybe dealt with some injuries, or just are starting to get to that older age where you don't want to, like you were saying, maybe a 7th, 8th round pick. You wouldn't invest that in this group of guys, at least in my opinion. But Peter Skoronski, to me, deserves to be in this group at just 23 years old, 61.6 grade last year, which isn't great, but right. But they've started to build up that offensive line in Tennessee. They've added pieces, right center and tackle next to him are vastly improving. The head coach and offensive line coach, I don't know if he's OC, but offensive line coach are some of the best offensive line coaches in the league. I just expect it to get a lot better, right? I expect him to settle into the role of guard. He was a tackle as well, right? So this is new to him. I expect it to get better, right? I really do. And it wasn't terrible last year. It was just kind of average, right? It wasn't the high level that people expected because he was the 11th overall pick. It's going to take time when you transition from tackle to guard, and especially in the situation that he had last year in Tennessee, it was rough. Quentin Nelson, you mentioned him before, right? He's still only 28 years old, but the decline's been pretty steep. First 3 years in the league, he was looking like a Hall of Fame player. 91 grade in 2019, 86.2 in 2020. But then it's been high 60s, low 70s the last 3 years. And you kind of scratch your head and go, is this who he is now, right? Is there anything more in the tank? Can he get back to that high level of play? Injuries have been rough to him, but not only that, it's just kind of been a middling situation. And sometimes I do think that, I don't want to say he's uninspired, but guys kind of fall to the level of play around them. And I wonder if that was partially what was going on. I think the situation gets better this year with Richardson hopefully healthy. They've added some people at receiver, and another year with the new head coach. Is it Shane Steichen? I think so, right? I think he gets a lot better. I think it continues to develop. I think maybe we see mid 70s play instead of low 70s play from him, and hopefully he resurrects that career. I think he's a guy that can absolutely do that. I'm definitely not giving up on him. Robert Hunt, 28 years old in Carolina now, 77.1 grade last year with the Dolphins. He's partially our pet cats, both of ours. We both love him. He is a very fun and exciting player to watch, and he does have that career growth, right? Every year has been a little bit better than the last, but it never really got to that point where we're saying this is a top guard in the league or in that conversation, right? He's now 28 years old. I think the time for him to get to that point is probably pretty close to done, right? Like he's in the prime. We're seeing prime, and prime's good, right? Like 77 is great at guard. So you kind of know what you have for him. And the reason he's in tier 3 is because, again, I just think we know what that ceiling is now. Elgton Jenkins on Green Bay, 28 years old, 65.4 grade last year. This is another guy that reminds me a little bit of like the career arc of Onwenu, just, kind of 2 years in the future, right? This is a guy that the Packers moved all around the offensive line, never gave him a stable home. And year over year, he was playing great football. But I think we saw the peak of what he was, even though now he settled into guard. I think we know what he is. It's a low 70s player, maybe high 60s in some weeks, but it's a good football player. And again, it's still just 28 years old in a really good offense with a good quarterback. Now that situation starts to stabilize again, I expect the best from him, right? I think it's going to be good. It's just never going to be great. So you know what you got. And then Luke Godeke, I don't know if I said his last name right, but we're going to run with it.
That was one of your better ones, actually.
I appreciate that.
I was proud.
Luke Godeke.
I don't think you said it correctly either, but it was one of the better ones. That's what I'm saying.
Cool.
Yeah.
25 years old, 72.5 grade last year for Tampa Bay. And the reason I didn't have him higher, because you might look at that and go, all right, he fits the criteria, right? 25 years old, 72 grade, still young, still performing well. Why is he not with the guys in tier 2 that kind of match that? The reason is because you have the card open right now, right? 43.7 in 2022. It was rough in 2022. People were looking at him like an absolute bust the year before last. And he was that second round pick. He has the draft pedigree. And I think the situation's getting better. I just want to see more of it. I want to see it over 2 years, right? Let it continue to grow. Let it continue to get better. Let's see what he becomes before we just automatically push him in that tier 2. But I think there's a chance that next year we're having this conversation and he's there, right? They drafted a center in Graham Barton that's going to play next to him. Cody Mauch last year was a guard that they drafted on the other side. So they're obviously investing in that offensive line. It's going to be another year with Baker Mayfield. So hopefully that gets better as well. I like it. I like the futures for Godeke. I just don't know if I'm ready yet to say he belongs in tier 2. But that's actually, I have 2 more guys. I lied. Tevin Jenkins in Chicago, 26 years old, 72.9 grade last year. He's another guy that has the draft pedigree. And last year was kind of the first year that he started to prove that maybe he could be that guy. Again, I want to see more of that. But now with Caleb Williams going there, I do expect the situation to get better. And yeah, Tevin Jenkins might be that guy to be one of the next guards that just, 3 years in a row, we're going to be saying this is a good football player. He deserves to be in tier 3. And then the last guy for me in tier 3 is New York Jets Elijah Vera Tucker, 25 years old, 71.7 grade last year. And he kind of falls into that Jenkins Onwenu bucket where they just continue to move him around the offensive line. And it honestly hurt him. He's dealt with injuries his entire career, hasn't been healthy for them. But when he does play football, he's a good football player. So they've committed to putting him at guard now. He's going to be a guard. I just expect him to settle in, and with maybe a healthy Aaron Rodgers, with the receiver depth they've added, with the running back skill that they have, with Tyron Smith potentially playing next to him, there could be a really good year in store for Elijah Vera Tucker. So he's somebody I'm excited about. That's tier 3. It's pretty big. It's 7 players. I don't think anybody else deserves to be in it. Let's hear your thoughts.
There's 2 schools of thought here, and I think they feed into each other. There's one school of thought that says, man, is Elgton Jenkins really in the same tier as Quentin Nelson? That's the first tier. That's the first school of thought. The second school of thought, from an all 22 user perspective, is, man, I'm sitting here. I'm on this really awesome brand new mobile app. I'm in my draft center, and due to name value, is Quentin Nelson going to be taken way earlier than he should? And I can get a similar player from a group of a half dozen or so guards that can give me similar production at a similar age 2 rounds later. Nelson's getting grabbed in round 11-ish, and I can get the same type of player in round 14. I think they feed into each other, and I think I lean towards the latter. But then Quentin Nelson will do something that makes me go, "Oh man, I don't know if these other guys are in the same tier as him." I mean, he was actually second in pass block efficiency in the NFL last year, so he still has these flashes. It's not the consistent dominance we saw early in his career, and that's what ultimately I think is what has no longer been there and is what has caused him to descend into this third-ish tier. I don't think that's something you really get back at 28 years old. I think it's just, the lower leg injuries that he suffered for a few years in a row there early middle part of his career thus far is kind of sapped that from him. So I think the tier is justifiably large, and it's just something you have to use to your advantage by maybe hunting for those that don't have quite the name recognition of someone like a Quentin Nelson. There might be someone who's a huge believer in Peter Skoronski, or was, of him coming into the league and says, "Hey, I'm not worried about his rookie grade. I'm still going to take him very highly. He's young." Let them do that. And then you go ahead and you nab the Elton Jenkins. You nab a guy like that that's going to get you similar grading 2 rounds later, and you move on with the construction of your team. Same goes with Elijah Vera Tucker. And, again, I say this about every Jets piece. Who the heck knows what that's going to look like 12 months from now? That could be you buy low now and sell high in a year. That's always the intrigue with the Jets players on offense in 2024. So that's just another thing to note. But overall, I think those are the two schools of thought, and I think you can play off of that as a user by targeting the names you mentioned that don't quite have the star power of some of the others.
How do you start to tier it, right? This is tier 3, but how do you start to rank tier 3?
Well, I'm on the clock. Who am I going to take first? I don't know who the hell I'm going to take. That's the thing. If I'm on the clock and all these guys are there, I'm taking a linebacker. I'm taking a good safety.
Probably not taking a linebacker, but yeah.
I'm probably not taking a linebacker because you're right. I'm probably not taking. That's like the one position I'm not. Yeah, I'm probably taking a defensive interior player or something like that. But
I think if it's if it's me, right? 28-year-old Robert Hunt. Yes, he's gotten a little older. Yes, he's going to an interesting situation. But sometimes availability is the best ability, right? And he's somebody that's been available for Miami and now Carolina. He's grading well enough where I like it, right? I know it's never going to be fantastic. He's a good football player. So, I'm kind of saying to myself, maybe Robert Hunt is the top of this group. As crazy as that is, because he's obviously not a better football player than Quentin Nelson. Maybe he doesn't have the upside of Peter Skoronski or of Elijah Vera Tucker, but maybe he's the right choice.
Look at that bloody arm on Bryce Young there. Jeez, just a microcosm of last year. Maybe, but then I look at Vera Tucker and I'm like, damn, I like Vera Tucker, and he's younger and
he needs to play football.
He does need to play football. I get it. The best availability is availability, but I convinced myself that I'll just get someone with upside late in the draft that everybody's overlooking. And in the event of unavailability, I got someone else to plug in their place. That's called overconfidence for those of you listening. So don't do that. To that end, I might still take Quentin Nelson instead, because even when he's injured, which he has been for a while, he plays. Maybe it's just a bank on Richardson being healthy for the full year, and year 2 with the head coach, and maybe things get a little bit better. And he's into that mid-70s, which gets you another top 8 guard. I'd probably still take Nelson first. But again, in this scenario, probably as a user, I'm letting someone else take Nelson first and then shopping elsewhere in the tier with a later pick so I can get better value. But I think all else equal, I'm probably still putting Nelson above someone like Hunt, even though we love them both.
I'm okay with that. I think those are the next 2, though. Mm-hmm. So
I think we just got to put Quentin Nelson first because he was in a lot of. Well, no, so was Robert Hunt. We got the touchdown graphic of him. Yeah,
we use our favorites both a lot. Yeah, We're going to go 6 and 7, Nelson and Hunt. And then I think it's where I start to go, okay, it's probably Skoronski or Vera Tucker.
I'm taking Vera Tucker. Every time I say that, though, it's like, yeah, but Bill Callahan's a magician, and I like him a lot.
And they've added some really good football players around him, right? Latham and who's the center from Denver that they added?
So I'm still taking Vera Tucker. I'm not going to be a coward.
Okay, we're going to go Vera Tucker at 8, Peter Skoronski at 9, and then I think it's probably
You're thinking of Questenberry, I think, right?
Yeah, yes, I was. I think Godeke in Tampa Bay, just because of the rise in his play, they're adding weapons around him. The situation stabilizes a little bit with another year of Baker. Probably going there before I go Tevin Jenkins or Elkin Jenkins. But I think Tevin Jenkins could be a trade there too.
Yeah, look at Tevin Jenkins. I mean, he's a bull, and they got a quarterback now. Oh man, Luke Gedeke's about to do something crazy in this clip. Not going to play it because of the sound. Yeah, man, I think we're going to disagree on all these. I would go Tevin Jenkins over Luke Gedeke.
Okay.
Because I mean, I see why you might like Gedeke, but Tevin Jenkins, I mean, situation got a whole lot better. He still wasn't bad last year. Power player, 6'6", 220. Caleb's there. I like him.
Can you go to his weekly summary from 2022? I just want to check that out before I make a final call on this.
That was a long time ago. Are you the same person you were in 2022?
No, but I just wanted to see, and that's exactly what I expected, is that he missed time, and that great 80 grading is because he played like 8 games. So I do think there's something to that.
Sure, I guess, but he was also playing that well with what Justin Fields just standing back there staring down the X receiver for 4 full seconds before trying to do something else.
Totally. All right, I'm good with it. Let's go Tevin Jenkins at 10, Godeke at 11, and then that just leaves Jenkins with the Packers at 12. So we'll mark him in there, and then I'll take you through my tier 4. And this is where you all were probably waiting for. This is my cop-out tier, right? That I've had in every one of these that I've done. I have a tier 4A and a tier 4B. Tier 4A is the old guys with Joe Thuney from Kansas City, 31 years old, 74.5 grade. Isaac Sumaloa with Seumalo with Pittsburgh, 30 years old, 71.9. Wyatt Teller with Cleveland, 29, 72.9 grade last year. Joel Bitonio, Cleveland, 32 years old, 68 grade. Zach Martin, 33, 69.8 for Dallas. All of these guys are the older tier, and they were all essentially in a down year for them. Every single one of them, right? So we tell you to stay away from older guys most of the time, but like Zach Martin is Hall of Famer. But we see the regression, right? You're looking at it now. He's 33 years old. He's going to be playing part of this year at 34. The last 2 years have been low 70s, then high 60s. Do we see that continue to go down?
I mean, he had an ankle injury last year. He battled through some stuff. I'd like to think with Terrence Steele being a lot better next to him, because Terrence Steele is now a year removed from an ACL injury and kind of looks back to his old self, that we'll see Zach Martin probably more so like 2022 Zach Martin. I think the days of all this blue here, he was literally guard 1, 2, or 3 for like 8 straight seasons. I think that's gone. I think that's over and done with. But could he spit out a guard 15 season for you, guard 13, guard 12? He might have one more in him. The thing with him is this might legitimately be his last season. The question has been asked, and it wasn't flat out denied. He just kind of did like a mean lineman thing, like, don't ever ask me that again. And they stopped asking him about it, but he didn't really say no.
So which of the guys that I just said do you think still has high-end play left in the tank?
I think he's the best one, but it might be literally just for once, and that's that.
I think Wyatt Teller has a decent chance.
Teller's a very good one too,
because he's still just 29. So while he's like probably at the end of his prime, and we've seen the decline start, right? Similarly, right? 92.9 and then 84.9, 70 and then 72.9. I also think that situation has just been so unstable with Watson coming in and out of play. This seems like the year that maybe he's going to start the year and, maybe he's healthy the whole year and things stabilize a little bit, right? What does that look like for Teller? What does that look like for Joel Bitonio? I don't know, but if I had to bet on anyone on this list, it's probably Teller because of he's the only one that's not 30 years old, right? Like, and there's probably some youth in his legs. But that's tier 4A. Tier 4B is the other end of the spectrum, right? It's what we haven't seen yet, but it's promising prospects. And that starts with Cooper Beebe in Dallas, 23 years old. Brandon Coleman in Washington, also 23. Jackson Powers Johnson in Vegas at 21. Christian Haynes now going to Seattle. He's 24. And Zach Sinter in Cleveland at 23. These are all the young guys in the draft, right? We don't know what their PFF grade is yet because they haven't played in the NFL. We do know what college was, and obviously it's high. But we're not going to talk about that because it doesn't really translate. It's not good context. But to me, two guys stand out, and that's Jackson Powers Johnson and Cooper Beebe as the guys that pre-draft I loved, right? And they both went to very promising situations in terms of what they can be. Say what you want about Vegas, but that offensive line isn't the worst situation in football. It's not the worst offensive line in football. You have guys at tackle in Colton Miller. You have a center that's performing well. And Powers Johnson is going to slip in at guard and probably help stabilize that situation a little bit. Yes, they don't have a quarterback yet for the long haul. That'll probably come next year. But I like it, right? I like the situation. And then Beebe, 23 years old in Dallas, he's going to learn behind Zach, either behind or with Zach Martin for a year. That's incredible, right? Like that's Tyler Smith, we talked about 3 years ago being our guy. We expected that rise rapidly in his play. I don't know if Cooper Beebe is that level of prospect. I don't think so, but he's good, right? Like he's good and he's strong and he's tough and he kind of fits what Zach Martin is. And I wonder if some of that rubs off on him, at the next level.
I would go almost in a different direction in the young tier. Since we did our center episode, in between our center and guard episode, Cooper Beebe has now gotten more first-team reps at center with the Cowboys. Ooh. So we kind of mentioned during the center episode that we're not sure where he might end up. He might sit this year, then replace Zach Martin, or he might take over at center and beat out Brock Hoffman and replace Tyler Biadasz for the Cowboys, and then the Cowboys have to worry about just filling in guard after this season. We still don't know exactly how that's going to shake out, but looking a little bit more likely that BB will ascend at center, at least as we sit here in mid-August. So that's one thing. It's like we like the player. We like the trajectory, like you mentioned. We're just not sure exactly where it'll end up or where he will end up. But there's some other young names here too. Maybe not quite as young as far as like 23 and under, but then some of them are. But you have, Landon Dickerson in Philadelphia, and that line is still stable. Yes, they lost Kelsey, but it's still a good situation, a good offense overall. They added some weapons, a lot of things that just take the stress off of that offensive line for the most part. And he's a good player, right? Ranked out just outside the top 15 last season for the Eagles. I don't think he mentioned. Did you mention Brandon Scherf with the old guys? I would put him in there too. I say no. I have him in a different I'm older than him. Wow.
I have him in a different tier because of two reasons. One, he is at the old end of old with that group, where I understand Joel Bitonio and Zach Martin are in that range too. But his level of play has declined further than those guys. And he's in Jacksonville, that situation. I always say it, right? It's like
Jags, man.
It's just one of those situations where it's really hard to get good players to go there. And they have to go and get Brandon Scherf at the end of the career, right? Like that's the kind of guys they bring in. And I like Scherf. He's a leap, right? You see it right there on your screen. But I've also had him experience that 59 grade in 2022 and 67.3 last year. It's a little uninspiring at this point.
Okay. All right, fair enough. So I'll stick with the young guys here, but you have someone like Zion Johnson. 2 not so good years. I mean, rookie year was okay in 2022. Not great at all in 2023. But again, you have new head coach. They run the football. They're downhill. They know exactly what they want to do. And they just rep it and rep it and rep it some more. If nothing else, for all of the chaos he brings off the field and pretty much every time he opens his mouth, Jim Harbaugh brings a lot of stability on the field for an offense. And I think that's something that'll help someone like Zion Johnson, especially if he can stay healthy. So while he hasn't shown out too great just yet, if I'm talking young guys that I'm taking a chance on, it might be Zion Johnson before some of these other rookies. If I'm just going purely off of how I graded them heading into the league, and just because I haven't seen it yet from Zion Johnson, not dropping him too much. Two other young names that are intriguing where maybe I'm in pick, round 19 or something like that. I'm looking for a guard too. We'll see again where his position ultimately ends up, but Matthew Bergeron as well. I think he's very talented. Had some sort of growing pains as a rookie last year, but a lot of things are getting much better in Atlanta. So I think situation is up. You have the typical developmental curve for a young player like Bergeron. I think that's also in his favor, and I'm not giving up on him just yet. What's going to happen? Maybe I should, but what's going to happen with Kenyon Green? What's going to happen with him? Probably not a lot, but he was out all last year and had a very poor 2022, but I'm definitely not taking him in like the top 20 rounds, but this is like, I'm just going to mention him as a young player. He's still only 23 years old and we've seen nothing from him. So he's probably not going to be high in your rankings at all. Probably going to be off the radar for a lot of people that you could pick him up late. And maybe it's like, hey, he was a first round pick. He just missed a year. We all forgot about him. Just saying. It's possible.
So I fudged up. Landon Dickerson was not even on my list. So I just missed him.
Oh, no.
So honestly, I think he's tier 3. I think he's above
Tier
all of the
3.
guys.
Ooh,
yeah,
okay.
25 years old, 70 grading player, stable offense, really good offense, right? Like I think he deserves to be there. He would probably be above Tevin Jenkins and Luke Godeke for me.
Oh, no.
Probably. I think
He's
so.
got an injury history. It scares me. He's got like both knees. He's one of those guys. I'm pretty sure that's him. He's got like both knees from college. I don't know. It scares me. But if I hadn't known that, right? If I wasn't familiar with that, just going off of his age and performance, sure. But that's always there. And you never know when that kind of, creeps up and that's when it zaps you.
We could just like cheat, and because I missed him, we could just be like, yeah, he's 13. Like he's at the end of the list.
I'm okay with 13. I'm okay with 13.
I know you are. I don't feel great about it, but I'm going to put him at 13. I'm going to pencil him in because honestly, that's on me. I missed that. The other thing I'll say about what you were just talking about, all of the guys you mentioned, right? Matt Bergeron, Osiris Torrance, Zion Johnson, Kenyon Green.
Throw Torrance out the club. I imagine. Don't put him in with those names.
All right. Kenyon Green, those guys are all in my next tier. And it really is just because we've seen it and it wasn't good, right? Like they didn't show us anything that's like, prove to me that you are worthy of being here. But Luke Godeke, if you look at his, right, there was that first year where it was like in the 40s or 50s, and then the next year was 72. So it's not impossible, but I'm not going to pass on some guys that you've seen promising things from to draft one of those guys. At least I'm not. I don't think I would recommend that to my users either.
My methods are not for the faint of heart. I wouldn't recommend much of it at all to my users, but I'm not giving up on my pre-draft analysis so easily. That's what I did with Jalen Johnson, and then he was an All-Pro last year. So now look,
it's true.
I should have held strong and firm on that after like 3 mediocre seasons in a row. So it's all about what do you have the stomach for? What do you have the stomach for? But I think a lot of those at that point, ideally, you're looking at a guard 2. So it's just a matter of what you got with guard 1. You probably took your first guard somewhere in the first 14-ish rounds of a startup, right? Whether it was a top guy, someone like an Elton Jenkins or something that's steady, above average, still has some years left, you know what you're going to get, whatever it is, right? And that kind of leads you to whether or not you take a shot on one of these younger guys. Again, whether it's a rookie, whether it's a Zion Johnson or whatever else, a Bergeron or something. That I think you play that off of whatever you took initially. If you got like the gold standard and you got a Chris Lindstrom or something, then that's up to your risk tolerance as to whether you take a young guy for guard 2 that you maybe haven't seen it from yet or have just seen maybe 1 year of, or you take a steady vet to really lock in that high floor. That's up to your risk tolerance. I'm the risk tolerant guy, so I would go with the younger not shot in the dark, but the younger play there. over someone like, again, a Scherf or some of those other names you mentioned, a Teller.
You
Teller
mentioned
might be
Scherf,
the exception.
not
Yeah, I
me.
mentioned Scherf.
So,
You
okay,
just
so you want to start with
crapped
the
on him.
young guys, and I don't think that's wrong, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
Jackson Powers Johnson and BB for me are probably the two that I would float to the top of this conversation. I
Yeah.
think of the guys that you mentioned, Bergeron, maybe, but Zion Johnson is the one that I'm still kind of bought into. Reason being is like new coaching staff is going to love what that guy can do, right? And you made that offensive line better. It's now Slayton and Joe Alt at the tackle positions. Like this could be a great offensive line this year. And Zion Johnson, we know, has the skill to get there. So for me, he might be like you might be right. Maybe he deserves to be in that upper echelon of this group of guys.
So you're taking Zion over Bergeron.
Yes.
That's I like them both a lot. I actually might have liked Bergeron a little bit more coming into the league, so I might have him just above him, but I could see why you would take Zion. I could see that. I'll let you have that one, as you say.
Wait. But I'm taking Powers Johnson and BB over both of them.
I'm taking Powers Johnson. I'm going to try to. It's probably 60-40 BB at center. So I'm trying. I mean, I guess we'll put him here because we have to slot him somewhere. He's listed at guard right now, and that's what he is currently.
And we didn't put him in the center conversation, I don't think.
So let's make a whole episode just about Cooper Beebe.
I would love to. I'm pretty sure we did also.
We did, and you gushed about him.
Yeah, I did. I love that guy.
Yeah. If we have to put him somewhere, we put him here. I would probably have Powers Johnson over him, over both of them.
Yeah,
over all of them. I'd have
Agreed.
Powers Johnson over all of them.
He's next.
Yeah,
he's next. He's 14. BB's 15, and then I think I'm saying it would be Zion at 16 and Bergeron at 17.
I think after those names, if they're all gone, I'm waiting a bit longer to take my next guard. If
Agreed.
Two of them are on the board, depending on how I rank them, I'll take one over the other. I think that little mini tier of 4 right there, what's that, a quartet?
Ooh.
I'll take, yeah, you like that? I probably pick there like around 19-ish or something, again, when I'm taking my second guard.
I might even wait longer, I'm going to be honest.
Not if I'm in the draft, buddy. They'll be
right.
gone.
Well, because it's all 22 players starting lineup, right? Yeah. I don't think I'm taking a poor performing guard before I take maybe my second receiver.
You just told me how much you love what Zion Johnson might be able to do here. Now you're not going to take a shot on him in round 19. Your starting lineup's almost done.
It's not done yet, though.
Okay.
All right. So Zion at 16, Bergeron at 17. Are you good with that?
Sure.
Okay. I think then I'm going with some of the older guys. I think that's when the conversation starts for Wyatt Teller and Zach Martin.
I think it ends with Teller right here, and then you put Martin after him. I wouldn't put any of those other names above Teller.
Those are the two I wanted to say, and I said it. 18 and 19, Teller.
Yeah, but you didn't say it definitively enough. Like you got to, like Teller deserves more than that. Whatever that tone was that she gave there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now I have no idea. I think the only thing I'll say next is Brandon Coleman was selected above Cooper Beebe and Jackson Powers Johnson, I think. Not that I liked him as much as a prospect, but Washington invested in him early in this draft. He's going to be a starter on that offensive line, I would assume. And Jaden Daniels, good receivers, good, decent rushing game. Might be a decent player to take a shot on.
I'm not buying it.
Brandon
Coleman's fine. He's fine, but I'm not buying it. Some teams, remember, I always say some teams don't know how to draft. And if you look at Washington, that's one of those teams that don't know how to draft.
Yeah. It's true.
So that, that draft capital there doesn't mean too much to me. Not over some of the other names that I liked anyway.
Like Christian Haynes, who we did both like, maybe not as much as BB or Powers Johnson, but we did like Haynes. He goes to Seattle and he's slotting in next to tackles that we both like as well. So I think he's maybe somebody that's interesting as well. But then you kind of ask the question, right? Like, are you buying into him over, again, those older guys that are going to be good, right? Joe Thuney is still playing really well, mid-70s play, which for a guard is like guard 4.
I think at this point, the reason I go with the vets is because now that we're here in this position, looking at the young guys, there's a Christian Haynes next year. There's a Christian Haynes in every draft class.
Yes.
right? Whereas, depending on your opinion of him, there's not necessarily a Matt Bergeron in every draft class. And by that, I don't mean that like guard one in a given draft class isn't better than Matt Bergeron, but in the sense that, sometimes when you get to guard 3 or 4 in a draft class, they could be a lot worse than Matt Bergeron.
Mm-hmm.
Christian Haynes, that's every year. And it's just, you look at Christian Haynes and we like the player. I think if the Seahawks didn't just always just like fire a bazooka at the running back position early on in the draft, that would be a team that really knows how to draft, because they pick good players a lot of the time. They just take too much capital at that running back position, like consecutively, and you just kind of scratch your head. Yeah. But other than that, they know what the heck they're doing at these other spots. And I think Christian Haynes is going to be another example of that.
Okay. So would you take him over Joe Thuney?
No.
Okay. Is that who's next then? 20. Guard 20.
Yeah, I think he's next.
Okay. 20.
At this point, it's some certainty with performance.
All right. So then is Haynes next? Are we going Bitonio? Are we going, I can't say his name, dude from Pittsburgh, Isaac
Seumalo.
I
feel like you're the Pittsburgh guy.
I am. And they did pay him a lot of money to be there, right? Stole him from Philly a couple years ago. I don't think it's a bad pick, but I just think that you know what he is, and he's towards the end of his career. So is it going to be great? I don't know.
I'm taking Seumalo here. Just because if they're all the same, he's a couple years younger.
Okay. 21. And then is it Bitonio, or is that when you go Brandon Coleman, Christian Haynes, guys like that?
Damn. I'm probably still taking Bitonio.
Me too. Okay. Yeah. I'm going Bitonio, but then I'm going Christian Haynes. Then I'm going Brandon Coleman, and that's 23 and 24. A couple of guys I want to mention after that, right? My pet cat from last draft was Cody Mauch, who had a really bad year in Tampa. But again, it's one of those situations. He was a tackle at North Dakota State, right? Like not nearly as good football. The level of football was way, way worse. And then going from tackle to guard. Honestly, I think he's built to play tackle. But they're going to keep him at guard. I'm pretty sure they're going to keep him at guard. But that was a bad year, 44.7. We just saw a teammate of his in Luke Godeke go from that, like almost that exact grade to pretty good. So I expect something to get better here. I expect him to improve. And I would still kind of buy into it. But let me read you a few other names that I have here, right? Shaq Mason, 31, in Houston, had a 66.5 last year. You mentioned Brendan Sheriff before. Alex Kappa in Cincinnati, 29 years old, 64.9. Sorry, Giants fans, but Will Hernandez, Arizona, 66.2 grade, 29 years old. Graham Glasnow for Detroit, 32 years old, 75.1. And then there's a bunch of other guys that I can mention that are kind of like one-hit wonder kind of guys, like Kevin Dotson, David Edwards, Greg Van Ratten, Kevin Zeitler, who's not a one-hit wonder but is way old, Ben Cleveland, Nate Herbig, Dylan, I don't know how to say his last name in Tennessee, Radunes, him, and then Cole Strange in New England, 26 years old, 64.7. There's a lot of guards that are going to be starting in the NFL this year, right? It's really just who do you still believe in to get you that consistent level of play? I think that's kind of where we are now.
Where I'm looking at this player card here on the screen, we're looking at Will Hernandez. He's 29 years old. Seems like he'd be older, but good for him. Has he ever been in a good situation besides his rookie year? Like, has the offense he's in ever been like good?
No.
Because the offense he has now might be pretty good.
Maybe.
And does that get him from guard 23 to guard 19?
Maybe. That's all I have to say about that. Like, see, like New York.
This is what you're trying to figure out at this point in guard, because you're looking now at you're either on the low end of guard 2, your second starting guard, or your top backup, and you're looking for something to go, this is why I like him over this pile of Jenga pieces that all look very similar to each other. That might be it. It might be the fact that now his offense has like an actual receiver, another young running back, some offensive tackles that are kind of growing up, like Paris Johnson. They got their quarterback back. Is this it? Could we see like a high watermark towards the latter part of Will Hernandez's physical prime?
I think so. I think that's a good call out. I think there's two other guys that you can make arguments for. Kevin Dotson got signed for pretty big money with the Rams, and he's still 27 years old, had an 85.2 in limited action last year. He's not an 85.2 player, like we know that, but going to a Sean McVay offense, getting paid good money to do that, and then that pretty consistent mid-60s grading, maybe Kevin Dotson is also one of those players where it's like, okay, it's going to get better for him, and he's still young enough that like you might have him for 4 years, right? And you might be able to do that. The other guy I'll mention is kind of the butt of many jokes is Cole Strange, right? Like 26 years old for New England. We didn't love his tape. They took him in the first round. Sean McVay, I think, was laughing about that at one point. But last year was not that bad. 64.7 grading at just 26 years old. And again, got the draft pedigree. He's locked in, I think, for 2 more years contractually before they even decide on the 5th year. Maybe he's a guy that like is just worth taking a shot in, as guard 3 on your team. Oh, he's on the IR. What happened?
No, I think that's just last year.
Okay.
Like teams don't know how to draft. I think sometimes, because you remember like the discourse, right? When someone like Cole Strange is picked, you have the people like, who the heck is this? Those are the ones that like really didn't study anything really. Then you have those that are like, this is what are they doing? Like, what are you actually doing here? This is not a good pick. This is a reach. And then there's those that are like, you guys think you know more than an NFL, organization. Teams don't know how to draft. I think this is just an example of it. Like, you shouldn't have taken Cole Strange. That was just a bad pick from the very beginning. Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure how that, like, the last interior spot there is going to be shaken out in New England. Is it going to be him? Is it going to be Sidy So, who I actually like? Mm-hmm. I think he's going into his 2nd year from like Eastern Michigan or something like that. Yeah. Eastern Michigan. He wasn't bad as a rookie either. Wasn't great by any means, but yes, 64.4, just inside the top 30 there at guard. If I'm taking any of those young Patriots guys, if you even call him young, he's 26 because he was an old rookie. I might take Sidy So.
I have him in my Matthew Bergeron tier, so he's in there. I do believe in him as well. I just like. It's really hard to know what this new Patriots regime is going to.
Yeah, it's a bit of a crapshoot, which is why I'm not touching them until like the 30s. That's the rounds in a startup, for example. But yeah, I think if I'm taking any Patriots lineman outside of Onwenu at a certain point, it's probably him late. Mm-hmm.
We got to 24. The last guy I kind of want to talk about before I'm like done with talking about guards is Dylan Radins, I think you said, right? He's still 26 as well. And we talked about how much better Tennessee's offensive line is getting. 67.2 grade last year. Maybe that's somebody to keep an eye on, right? Like he had the best year of his career. Coaching staff gets way better. Offensive line gets better. Added pieces to the offensive line. Why not him?
Man, I'm looking at the interior of this Titans offensive line. It looks like none of them are power players. Skoronski, Radins, like they just don't look strong, and it's weird because it's like I love their offensive line coach. I think Callahan's amazing. He's incredible. The offense as a whole is getting better, but like,
think about the guy they drafted, J.C. Latham. It couldn't have gotten stronger.
Yeah, on the outside, he's a freaking beast.
I'm just saying the interior one pick they made. The one pick that this group made is J.C. Latham.
Yeah.
For context.
So how does he fit? I don't know. If I'm putting my chips on the table, it's going to be probably for, it's obviously going to be for Latham if I'm picking anyone on the Titans line. But then I could see the argument for Skoronski, given that we kind of projected him inside anyway. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I'm there yet with Radins. He reminds me similar to Malk at tackle in Tampa Bay, to where he's probably not athletic enough to be on the edge at tackle in the NFL, but he's built like a tackle, doesn't really have like that stout interior anchor for guard. So he doesn't really have a home. I worry about that with Radens, but he performed better than Mauk. I'm just not in love with the profile of either of them, to be honest. And that's what keeps me from just straight looking at the metrics and the situation and going, hey, Radens could be something. I'm probably just passing.
Okay. Anybody else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Let's see. Let's go through my notes, see if we hit anybody.
I mean, Torrance needs to be talked about, I guess, a little bit, right? Because people loved him last year, and he wasn't our guy. I didn't love his film. Big body guy, but I thought he lacked leverage. He lacked technique. He was a really raw football player. But he went to a fantastic situation in Buffalo. People thought they were going to take him in the first round. They end up getting him in the second round. And it's a great fit, right? And I agree with that. But he didn't perform. And the concerns that we had showed up on film often and early and often. So I expect that to continue, but I do think he's worth rostering in all 22. Like if he's your guard 4, that's a good bet to take, right? Because Buffalo's a good situation, a great coaching staff, good quarterback. I expect him to be coached by the best in the business, and maybe he does get better. Maybe he finds his way and it becomes a good football player. As guard 4, I'm fine with that. Just don't bank on him, playing for you this year.
Sure, I'll draft him and trade him to someone who thinks like that, because I don't really want him on my team, to be honest. I'm looking at my notes. We hit on everybody I wanted to hit on. I thought I would have to bring up Scherf. Well, I did have to bring up Scherf to you for the most part, but I thought that would be a name we might not talk about till the end. We hit on all of them, and that's guard. If you kind of notice the flow of this episode, it had a steep drop off there after about number 14 or so. At this position. That's something you want to keep in mind when you're building your team. You want to get at least one of those top 14 guys. Don't look at that position value, see it low relative to the others and wait too long, because could come back to bite you, and you'll spend a lot of time on that beautiful new mobile app, looking pretty sad though at the state of your roster.
Yep, that's right. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't yet, please give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and what did I miss?
Instagram.
I always miss one.
You always miss one, and I always think it's Instagram, and it's not. And I just say Instagram.
Not Instagram. Doesn't matter. At all22_PFF, and leave us a review wherever you watch or listen to your podcast. But most of all now, people, go download the app and play some All22, and have a great day.